You picked up your phone 11 minutes ago. You told yourself it would be quick. It wasn't quick. Somewhere between the second app and the third, you forgot why you opened it at all. You assume this is a personal failing, a modern weakness, a simple lack of discipline, but the real answer is far stranger than that. The urge pulling your thumb toward that screen right now isn't a flaw in your willpower. It's 300,000 years old. It belonged to your ancestors long before there was a screen to hold, long before there was a written word or a wheel or a fire that didn't need tending by hand. The behavior driving you to check that app one more time is the same behavior that once kept a person alive through a season of uncertain food. Your brain hasn't caught up to the century you live in. It's still running software built for the savannah. Here is what that actually means. For most of human history, food was never a guaranteed event. It was a search. Your ancestors didn't walk to a refrigerator. They walked into unfamiliar terrain, not knowing whether today would end in a meal or in nothing at all. Some days the search paid off. Some days it didn't. And the nervous system that survived best wasn't the one that gave up after a few failed attempts. It was the one that kept searching anyway, patch after patch, with no promise of what waited in the next one. Anthropologist Frank Marlowe spent years living among the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, documenting exactly how unpredictable this search really is. Food doesn't arrive on a schedule. It clusters in patches. A stand of berries here, a burrow there, then nothing for hours. Then, suddenly, something. The Hadza, like your distant ancestors, evolved a brain built to tolerate exactly this kind of randomness. Not steady reward, scattered reward. The kind that could show up at any moment or not at all. Ecologists have a name for the exact moment a forager decides a patch isn't worth the wait anymore. Biologist Eric Charnoff modeled this decision mathematically in what's now called the marginal value theorem, a framework explaining when an animal should abandon a thinning patch of food and search for a new one instead. The logic is simple, even when the math isn't. Every patch starts rich and slowly produces less the longer you linger there. At some point, staying and hoping becomes the worst bet. Leaving and searching somewhere new becomes the better one. Your ancestors made this calculation constantly, often without a single conscious thought, weighing the diminishing returns of where they stood against the unknown promise of wherever they hadn't looked yet. So why would evolution favor a brain that keeps searching even when the odds look bad? Because quitting was more dangerous than continuing. A brain that gave up too soon starved before the season ended. A brain that kept moving, kept checking, kept scanning past the empty patches toward the next possible one, lived long enough to pass itself down. Generation after generation, that restless, searching brain won. It became the brain sitting behind your eyes right now, still scanning, just for something else. Food wasn't the only thing your ancestors had to keep checking on either. Survival also depended on tracking the people around them. Who was angry? Who was forming an alliance? Who might share their next kill and who might not? Anthropologist Robin Dunbar has shown that human social groups across history clustered around roughly 150 individuals, a number small enough that everyone's standing genuinely mattered, and large enough that you couldn't simply track it by accident. In small, tightly bound social groups like this, falling out of step with shifting alliances could be just as deadly as failing to find food. That meant the brain needed a second search system, one constantly scanning for social information. Has anything changed? Has anyone said anything about you? Is your status still secure? This wasn't gossip for entertainment. It was survival information, gathered compulsively, because missing it could cost everything. Notice how closely that mirrors something you do today. This is where neuroscience fills in the missing piece. For decades, scientists assumed dopamine was simply the brain's pleasure chemical, the reward you feel once something good happens. But the late neuroscientist Jaak Panksepp, who spent his career mapping the core emotional circuits shared across mammals, found something different. He identified a system he named seeking, not a circuit for enjoying a reward once it arrives, a circuit for wanting one before it does. In plain terms, Panksepp's research showed that dopamine mostly isn't a reward signal. It's an anticipation signal. It spikes before the discovery, not after it. It spikes during the search itself, the walking, the scanning, The not yet knowing. This is the exact circuit that once lit up in an ancestor stepping into an unfamiliar patch of forest, uncertain what they'd find there. And it's the same circuit lighting up in you right now, every time you reach for your phone without quite deciding to. In the 1950s, a Harvard psychologist named B.F. Skinner ran a series of experiments that would, decades later, explain exactly why you can't put that phone down. Skinner placed pigeons in a box containing a single lever. Peck the lever, receive a food pellet. Simple enough. Then he changed the rule. Instead of a pellet every time, the pigeons received one only sometimes, on no fixed pattern at all. What happened next surprised even Skinner. Pigeons rewarded every single time eventually slowed their pecking. They knew exactly what to expect, so the urgency drained away. But pigeons rewarded only sometimes, with no way to predict when, pecked almost without stopping. Faster, longer, more often, not less. Skinner called this pattern variable ratio reinforcement. In plain English, an unpredictable reward produces far more persistent, far more compulsive behavior than a guaranteed one ever could. Casino designers took notice decades ago, and modern slot machines are engineered around this exact same schedule, paying out on no fixed rhythm at all, for precisely this reason. And there's a darker detail buried in Skinner's data. Behaviors built on unpredictable reward are also the hardest to extinguish. Even after Skinner stopped rewarding the pigeons at all, the variable reward birds kept pecking the lever for far longer than the predictably rewarded ones, refusing to believe the reward had truly stopped coming. Your ancestor searching for food was living inside exactly that pattern. The next patch of berries might hold something. It might not. That uncertainty is precisely what kept the search alive, season after season, well past the point where giving up might have seemed reasonable. The reward never needed to be guaranteed. It only needed to remain possible. Now think about the last time you pulled down on your phone screen to refresh a feed. Nothing forces you to keep scrolling. There's no guarantee the next post, the next message, the next video clip will be worth the wait. Some of them are forgettable. A few of them aren't. And you don't know in advance which is which. That uncertainty isn't an accident of design. It's variable ratio reinforcement, the same mechanism Skinner documented in a box of pigeons, dressed up in a glass rectangle and handed to you before you turn 10. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. A Stanford researcher named B.J. Fogg spent years studying what actually makes technology habit-forming. His work, often referred to as persuasive technology, asked a direct question. How do you design a product people return to compulsively, almost without choosing to? Fogg's research became foundational reading across an entire generation of app designers, and many of the engineers who built the platforms living on your phone studied his work directly in his own classroom before going on to build the products you check today. The notification badge showing an unknown, unpredictable number. The pull to refresh gesture that mimics a slot machine lever almost exactly. The infinite scroll that never once tells you the content has ended. None of these were built around your well-being. They were built around your ancestors' foraging brain, around the seeking circuit Panksepp mapped, around the same restless uncertainty that once pulled a hunter-gatherer toward an unfamiliar patch of forest, unsure whether anything useful waited there at all. Your phone didn't invent that circuit. It found one already installed and built an entire industry on top of it. This is also why you rarely stay inside just one app. The instant a feed starts feeling thin, you leave it and open another, hunting a fresh patch the moment the old one stops producing. That's the same patch-leaving instinct Charnoff modeled in Foragers decades ago, just compressed into a swipe and repeated dozens of times an hour. And here's the twist most people never quite catch. The dopamine spike doesn't actually come from finding something good on your phone. It comes from the half second just before you know what you'll find. The instant after you press refresh, before the new content loads. That tiny window of not yet knowing is doing almost all of the work. Once the content appears, win or lose, the chemical signal has already peaked and started fading. You aren't really chasing the reward at all. You're chasing the search itself. That's why scrolling so rarely feels satisfying, even when something genuinely good appears on the screen. The system was never built to reward arrival. It was built to reward the seeking. And seeking, almost by definition, never quite finishes. So what does any of this actually mean for the 11 minutes you just spent staring at a glowing rectangle, half aware you were even doing it? It doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean something inside you is broken. It means a survival mechanism shaped across 300,000 years of unpredictable foraging is doing precisely what it evolved to do. The terrain changed completely. The behavior didn't change at all. Your ancestors searched patchy forests for food they couldn't guarantee. You search a patchy feed for content you can't guarantee, and for social information you're still wired to need just as urgently. Same circuit, same uncertainty, same chemical signature, lighting up beneath the surface of something that feels like nothing more than a habit. Understanding all of this doesn't switch the urge off, but it does change what the urge means. The next time it shows up uninvited, the next time your thumb drifts toward that screen without your full permission, you'll know what's actually happening underneath the gesture. Not a flaw, not laziness, an ancient search instinct, still scanning the horizon for the next patch, still convinced that something worth finding might be just one more swipe away. You'll pick up your phone again. You probably already know that about yourself. But this time, when you do, you'll recognize the oldest hunter inside you. Still walking, still searching, still certain that the next patch might finally be the one worth finding.